right, I got a green light on this thing, so. So in this session 11, weddings, funerals, and ordinances. So we're gonna cover three main areas tonight, and hopefully we will be able to dig into them and answer any questions that you have. The first section we're gonna look at is weddings, and I had a pretty good sized wedding in our church this year and only had one so far. Most pastors will tell you that they would rather do a wedding than a funeral. But there's a lot of reasons for that. We'll learn some of them tonight. Is that thing crooked?
No.
Very crooked, man.
A little bit, but it's not bad.
I wouldn't worry
Okay.
about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we can
Then I
see
won't
it.
move Maybe I got a crooked eye, right?
You're sideways, you're like this.
When you look at it at an angle, it's pretty straight.
Right, if you look at it at an angle. All right, so this first part being weddings, and weddings can be very beautiful, and they're a joyous time for family and that bride and that groom, but for the people putting it together, sometimes it can be a little chaotic if there's not some organization, and especially if the pastor does not, hadn't had any guidance in them. The first wedding that I did, I had not been shown anything. Of course, the first funeral I did, I had not been taught anything. So I learned the hard way very many things, and that's why I do enjoy teaching this, because it'll help to prepare some of you. So know your church's wedding policy. This is very, very important to know what your church believes, how they want to operate when it comes to weddings. Some of your churches may not even have a wedding policy. I would recommend that if your church doesn't have a wedding policy, that you get one. And how about you, Miss Evelyn? Do y'all have a wedding policy?
I was just telling her,
We
we
just
should
talked
add
about
that.
I don't know if we have it, we need to add it.
Yeah, so
We
right
don't,
there.
we need to add it.
Y'all need a wedding decorator.
Good idea.
Funeral decorator?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
we just did one last weekend.
Oh, yeah.
How about your church?
And we DIY
Jonathan?
our own wedding.
We don't, to me, I don't think we really have in fact, I know we don't have a wedding policy. We have a policy on using the buildings for
Okay,
weddings.
that'll
but
Yeah,
come.
we have that, yeah.
How about Grace? Do they have a wedding policy? Okay. I know First Temple's bound to have, you're in a little bit bigger church.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, well, let's move on. So, who can you perform weddings for? This is important. Members only, the church body. Who are you allowed to perform weddings for? And this is very, very important because of some legal issues. I know our church, the church I pastored in the past, we completely redid our policy. We had two separate policies. One was for members and one was for non-members. After we redid the policy, it no longer included those outside the body of Christ in our church. So we did members only. When we had the meeting to do this, everyone, because of if you perform a wedding for anyone outside your church, then you're required to perform a wedding for anyone who wants you to. And so if Adam and Steve comes to your church and says, I want to do a wedding, then you're required to. And so for that reason, many churches went to members only. So when our church was going to vote on this, I said, now I need you to understand this. We've got some seniors in here who have some granddaughters who are going to want to get married, and you're going to come to me and say, I want to do my granddaughter's wedding here, and I'm going to say, is your granddaughter a member? Because if your granddaughter's not a member, we're not going to make an exception for you or your granddaughter. So if you vote on this, you need to understand what that means.
Right.
And I'm okay with you voting either way, but if we vote this way, I'm going to make sure we stick to it. Well, in that case, they said, we need to pray about this. We need to discuss this.
Yeah.
Well, when it was all finally said and done, it was pretty unanimous that because of the day we live in and the issues that are out there, we're just gonna make it members only. So,
If I can ask a question,
yes,
when new people come to your church, and let's say that, oh my God, I love this, and I wanna get married here, the process would be, first of all, they would have to sit with you guys and do an actual, like, membership, there's a, I don't know, application? Cause ours, I've never seen one in ours, so that's why I'm asking.
so and we will talk about that, in the Acts Training Center. In our church, in order to become a member, you have to go through a membership class.
Oh, okay.
We no longer let people come down the aisle. A traditional Baptist church anyway, I don't know about other ones, but traditional Baptist church, if you've moved into the town and you visited the church 4 or 5 times and you decide, I think I wanna be a member here, you come down the aisle and say, I came forward this morning desiring membership into the church. And in the traditional way that Baptists did it, they went into a business meeting right then and there and said, such and such has come this morning with a desire to be a member in the church. All in favor signify by saying amen. Everybody says amen. Any opposed?
Oh my.
No. Guess what? You're now a member of the church.
Yeah.
Or if they come from a letter, with letters, yeah.
church.
So, but what usually happens is that person comes down desiring membership, and then your clerk or your secretary requests a letter of membership from one Baptist church to the next. Because no church that I've ever known, whether you're Baptist, Methodist, or whatever, will accept a letter from a church of another denomination. They just don't do that. So, right. And so, now that doesn't mean that you can't come and say, hey, I want to be a member. And I'll go just very brief here, because we're talking about weddings, not membership. We have a full class on membership, or a section. But this is the thing, the last church that I pastored, for some reason, we attracted a lot of Pentecostal and Catholic, interestingly enough. So I had a Catholic lady join the church. I knew she was Catholic because she started cleaning our church. And she shared with our older ladies that she went to one of the Catholic churches. Well, she started attending some of the stuff with our ladies and liked it. So I had to tell her, I need you to understand something. In the Baptist church, we do not christen babies. We don't do that. And I said, we baptize people after they've accepted Christ. And I got the Bible and I showed her. And then she was like, then why didn't my church tell me that? I said, ma'am, I'm not here to dog your church. I'm not here to say, all I'm telling you is how we operate. I'm not here to challenge your previous faith or anything.
Do you
Yeah.
guys present the baby?
We dedicate a
Dedicate
child.
a baby when they first
Yeah.
born?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, and sometimes it may not even be when they're first born. It may be
Right.
2 or 3. But a baby dedication, and
Christening.
And
we're
christening is
not,
2 different things.
yeah, we're not talking about weddings, but a baby dedication is not for the baby. It's for the parent.
Right.
You're dedicating that baby to the Lord like Hannah did with Samuel, and it's so that the parent will covenant with God and with the church to raise that baby according to the word and according to, so anyway, we have, in our church right now, you have to go through a membership class. And if you want to be a member after that way you can learn what we believe, some basic things about our church. So we did weddings only for members, and once we did that, our church had to vote to make this policy. That way, if somebody said, well, my great niece, I've been a member of this church for 87 years, and my niece is, sorry, you were the one that voted as well, And why make policies if you're not gonna keep them?
Exactly.
So would you put that in a policy manual or in your bylaws? Because that's what they're getting
It is
working on right now.
Okay, we have a whole class on that, but let me just,
Yeah, I
Right.
went through that one, but I'm
yes.
just curious.
So what you do, what we have done is, in our bylaws, we have a section that says, policies, like Roman numeral 10, policies. Under it, it says wedding policy, child protective policy, building usage policy, or whatever. And then that's a separate document. and it's not necessarily in the bylaws themselves, but it's referenced as one of our policies.
Okay.
And then we wrote that policy separate. That way, if somebody wants a copy of the bylaws, you don't have to give them a book. You know, all the different policies are separate. Yes, Dick?
I understand what they said about, babies, we don't baptize babies. I went to a church before, we lived in Georgia, where they would not baptize children under like the age of 10 because they said they don't understand what, it was either 10 or 8 or 7.
And I do understand that. What we do is,
They wouldn't understand what it's
Right.
about.
anytime someone brought a child down, my own sister did this, we do not ever accept a child for baptism on a Sunday morning. If somebody comes down with a child or a child comes down, what I would say was, we are so glad you came down this morning in responding to God's word. And so mom and dad and Johnny here and I are gonna have a wonderful conversation after service today. Then after everybody's gone, I can go into the fellowship hall, and then I just look at the parents and tell them, I'm gonna ask some very basic questions to your child, and we're gonna see if they're ready to accept Christ and be baptized. And when you ask this set of questions that I always ask, if a child can't even tell you what sin is, mom and dad, I think we're gonna wait just a little while, and they'll get it. They'll be like, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. To me, it didn't feel.
yeah, we don't turn a child away from Jesus, ever. We are so glad you responded to Jesus this morning. But we don't say, just because they came down the aisle, that they're ready to be baptized and that sort
No,
of thing.
because there's a lot of people that's grown up in the church, they thought because they went up there as a kid that they're saved, and in reality, they had no relationship with God.
Yeah. Well, and they saw their older brother get to go up top in a robe and get in the water, and he got a Bible. Well, I want to get in the water and get a Bible, you know.
Yeah,
So.
That's my brother, I wanna be like my brother.
Back when my mom was going to church back when I was like in first, second grade, they used to, the New Life used to have these big baptisms at the lake, right?
Right.
And they took us out there, and my brother's like, I'm not getting baptized, you're not gonna dump me in the water. And I see my mom do it, my mom was like, you should do it, and I had no idea. I went out there, and I went in the water, unrepentant sinner, and I came out.
Yep. So, and we'll talk about baptism tonight as well. So, are there any fees? I know several churches that actually charge a fee. And at our church, we didn't charge a fee for members, but what we did do was have a $50 deposit, and if you left the church dirty, we had our janitor, or whatever you wanna call them, custodian come, and we paid them that $50 to clean the church. We didn't expect them to come clean up after somebody's mess for free.
Right.
So the $50 deposit, you would get back if the church was clean.
Right.
If it wasn't, we paid it. That way that person wasn't having to clean up after you, for free. So is there a deposit? Is there a building usage fee? When we had members and non-member policy, members didn't pay anything. Non-members, if you only used the sanctuary, it was $300. If you use the sanctuary in the education building where you could go in classrooms and change and have a room for the groom, and the fellowship hall, if you were having a reception, that was another $200. So for the non-members, you could rack up easily a $700 venue fee for the church. You know, go to any of these other ones out here today, and it's like $2,000–3,000.
Yeah.
So, but once we went to members only, all we charged was the deposit that you would get back. So, but you need to know that it needs to be in there. Who can operate, am I up there yet?
Church equipment, yes, you're.
Here's where I am. Is there any paperwork to read and sign? So in some policies, you actually make somebody read it and sign it so that if they're agreeing not to bring alcohol on the property, if they're agreeing not to mess with your sound equipment, whatever your policy is, it may be good to have people to read it and say and sign it stating so that if something goes wrong, you can say, hey, you read this and you signed it, and then you ruined that, now you need to take care of it,
Yeah,
so.
we learned, well, me, not with the wedding thing, but we learned recently in one of our ministries that, you know, what's understood, what we thought was understood that didn't need to be explained,
No.
needed to be written down on paper, right?
That is a given.
Yeah,
So-
we had a situation, I don't want to put this out there, but he did, one of our ministry guys, he did something very, I believe was very unethical, right?
Mhm.
And he didn't see no problem with it, he's like, well, you didn't tell me.
Right, that's the key.
And it's like, well, the next Friday we came and we had
Yep.
papers and we said, these are the rules, these are the rules and these are the,
Expectations of volunteers.
you know what I mean, the expectations of volunteers.
My favorite example of that, I was at a church and, I went into this closet and one of the walls had all these names on it. So-and-so was here, Angela loves Brian, all this kind of stuff on the wall. And some of it was with permanent marker and some of it was with, dry erase marker. And so I was like, what's up with the wall? And the deacon literally said, oh, that idiot youth pastor we used to have let the kids write on the wall. And, come on in, brother. And my statement to him, was, did you tell him he couldn't? And he said, any idiot knows you don't write on the walls. I said, in a youth building? And that's what he said. He ought to have known, wait, no, you didn't tell him, you know? And I wanted to paint murals on a wall when I was a youth pastor, and the pastor's wife told me that a church was meant to be warm and cordial, and I couldn't do it, you know? So, when I was a youth pastor, I wanted to draw on the walls too, all over them, you know? So, but after that, in the hiring of the youth pastor and the policy, it says that you can't alter any with paint, markers, anything without permission, right? So, okay, then the other one is, who can operate church equipment? So if you've got high expensive equipment in your sound booth and you don't want them using it, they need to know. You'll need to bring a Bluetooth to do the Canon ND or whatever you're gonna come down the aisle in, or you need to bring your own radio. If you don't want them using your equipment, don't, like you said, do not assume
Man,
that they will not
that-
get in the
that
sound
assuming
booth
will
and.
get you in trouble so
Right.
fast.
So, and then, if they want to use the equipment to put a picture up there or to play music, you may say, that's fine, let me check and see if one of our sound operators or AV guys is willing to come up.
Yeah, it
So-
was a great learning experience, learning, okay, that you gotta piece by piece tell people, when you're a
You
leader,
do.
you gotta draw it out for somebody.
You do, if you assume something will go wrong.
There's reason there was warning labels on the warning labels on the shampoo bottle, you know?
That's right.
That said, don't eat it.
Yeah.
Well, we had a funeral last Sunday at the church, and I was in the fellowship hall, like I said, I decorated everything, had it set up. Well, a few of the people who are not members, but they were relatives of the person that
Mhm.
passed away, came to the fellowship hall with their kids. And so we have expensive equipment in there too that belongs to the church, but also to the guys that know how to work it.
Mhm, mhm.
So I kinda thought ahead, so I put one of these tables in front of all the equipment and chairs, so you can tell you're not supposed to go
Mhm.
there. But sure enough, kids will be kids.
They call it right on.
And these young teenage girls climbing over there. Now, I did apologize later, but this came out first, and I was like, hey, come back.
She started chopping,
This
did
came
you see
first,
her?
you know?
She chopped at my grandma, and my grandma came back.
Or
and
your
my-
grandma threw trash on the floor.
My grandma.
Your grandma?
Yeah.
My grandma asked me, he said, Bianca, your grandma thinks Bianca doesn't like her.
Well, she dumped the trash.
I was like,
I had everything clean. I had everything clean, floors mopped, everything, and then she dumps the trash on the floor.
I was like,
So
it's
I
not
was
that.
like, Grandma, please go to the
Yeah.
church, you're supposed to be supporting your husband anyways, I don't know why you're in here.
Well, just make sure that, you know,
So I'm
if
still
you,
learning, I'm getting better.
if you don't want them to use, your equipment, make sure
Yeah.
that that's in there, who's,
Because these guys, you know, I think Hope
She was
would know,
chopping it down
those,
today.
the equipment itself is very costly.
Everybody
it's
was
called-
chopping
And
it.
even like the
Nobody was
microphones and
safe.
stuff like that, we had to tell one of the younger girls she couldn't have the real microphone because she was
Yeah.
too young and she'd break it.
Right.
So it really.
Yeah,
is
and
just
it's,
a cost.
if you can safeguard against it, I know at the previous church that I was at, we made the sound, we built the sound system in the back of the church and we made it with a door that locked. So, you know, those are just ways to help. Anyway, in the wedding policy, your church's policy, alcohol. Some churches are okay with just a toasting, but you know, if my family had a wedding, it's gonna be kegs of beer, you know, so, and they don't care if it's a church or cause they're pagans, so, you know, you need to know, and just because they're Christians don't mean that they don't drink, so, and regardless of what your personal stance is with it, if you don't put it in the wedding policy, they'll say, well, we weren't getting drunk, we just had some, what do you call that bubbly stuff? Champagne, I couldn't think of what it was called. You know, so, as innocent as it may seem to them, it may not be to you, that really needs to be in there, cause that can cause some major issues. I did have a wedding that I did at one time, and I did not know what was in that little thing that it was a Celtic thing, and he had one side of it, she had the other, and he took a drink, and then they were both holding it, and she took a drink, and I looked in there and I was like, well, don't know what that purple stuff is, don't care. I just didn't say anything. It could have been grape juice for all I know, you know?
It's a blood boil.
But, yeah, so,
That's terrible.
this right here is very, very important. We just had a wedding, you okay?
Yeah, that was fun.
Oh, okay.
It hurt more than it needed to.
So, I've had to bite mine before too, it was on purpose. Instructions for decorating in flowers.
Oh, yeah.
Justin was at a wedding at our church, and at the Hispanic end of, we meet in the fellowship hall, so our chairs don't matter. But in the Goodwill's sanctuary, they have wooden pews, and you don't need to be nailing nails in it to hang bows down the aisle. And you would think that, like you said, that's a given. Nobody would do. Oh yes, they'll use tacks.
And we weren't even allowed to use tape, we had to use hangers. And
Yeah.
we couldn't have the candles down the pews.
Yeah.
We could have them on the platform.
Right, so you just need to have those type of, because you wouldn't think that somebody would go, oh, I'll just stick a tack in that wooden pew, you know, they will. So, either having hangers on them with the bows, or just tie the bow around the whole edge of it, whatever, but that's very important. Other thing is, if they are gonna use candles, maybe you wanna put something down where the candle's gonna be on the floor, if it's carpet. All I'm saying is that you need some instructions for decorating, or they will go all out, you know, so. And then if you are a minister, you need to develop your own policy. So your church has a policy, but you should have a policy as well. And so, will you perform wedding ceremonies for non-Christians? So the first pastor that I served with, he told me that when he began in ministry, that he refused to unequally yoke anyone in marriage. He felt it was unbiblical. Later in life, he said, I felt like that I needed to change my stance on that. And he said the reason is because that may be an opportunity for me to minister to the one that's not saved, and you know, and then not only that, like twice during marriage counseling, I've led the young man to Christ in marriage counseling. So, but will you perform weddings for that? So you need to make that decision in your heart. The Bible does say that we shouldn't be unequally yoked in business, in marriage, in a lot of things where you're actually yoking up in a relationship with someone. So, and then how long is your premarital counseling, and will you charge? Notice I said how long is it, not should you have it. You should have some form of premarital counseling, your own personal. Your church may have some suggestions. Your church may even have one. I will tell you how I did mine. I went online and I looked up about a dozen of them. and some of them had 300 questions. And they were asking things that's none of your business. I'm serious. I was like, why does the pastor need to know that, you know? And then other ones were just like way too vague. So I read about 12 policies, and then mine's got about 30 questions on it, and they're in sections. One of them is financial. One of them is on children, how you want to raise children. The other one is on whether how you will work. Well, does the man expect her to stay home? Those are important questions before you actually get married. How do you like to spend money? Money is a big one. So I've got about 5 sections with 6 questions each or something like that. And so I've got a whole section on finance, a whole section on children, a whole section, and there's questions in there. So I took the major things that 2 people come together as one in. Children is a big one. Their own personal, like one example I would give in a wedding policy is, young man, you're not marrying your mama. So your mama might have ironed your boxers, but you can't expect her to, you know. And he's like, yeah, but you're not marrying your mama. That is a struggle in marriages between men and women. The man expects that woman to be his mama, and she's not his mama, right?
She's
I sure ain't.
You better check yourself. Yeah.
You know, it's funny because my mom, you know, she was married in the 70s, whatever, and she spoiled my dad, you know. So now they're older and she's sick and tired of it. So she's like, I don't want to do it no more, but you got him used to it. That's why I don't get him used to it.
Well, but treating them like, I told my wife, I said I didn't marry anybody like my mom, but I married my wife because she was like my grandma. She cooked.
Right.
good.
Right.
Good.
So will you, how long is your premarital counseling, and will you charge for that? I have a pastor friend that has about, I think it's 6 or 8 weeks, it may be 8 weeks that he does marital counseling, and he charges. He charges them, and part of the reason he charges is because he actually uses a marriage curriculum that he purchases, so it's laid out and he follows it. And so I don't use that. Mine is, I do 4 sessions, and the first session, all I do is say, tell me about yourself. What made you want to get married? Just tell, I let them just tell me why they fell in love, how they fell in love, and then I ask one major question in that first session. Tell me how you met Jesus Christ as your Savior.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's when I find out if they're both saved. And so now I've got 3 weeks. If like the 2 young men that weren't Christians, I said, you know, the Bible says that you need to be a spiritual head of your household. You need to, there's certain ways that you need to act. So we've got 3 weeks to get this thing together. We got 3 weeks before I join you together. Yes.
Nice.
So let's say that you don't see like this is happening. Will you still marry them, or what do you do in that case?
If I've agreed to do it, I'm not gonna back out. So once I've agreed, I'm not gonna back out even if the guy doesn't accept Christ, because then that would be a lack of integrity on my part. But what I'm hoping is, I'm praying. I mean, every time I know in that first session that I have someone who's not a Christian, and I let them know straight up, I'm gonna be praying for you for the next few weeks before this wedding. I'm gonna be praying for your soul. I'm just straightforward, you know, and so, and I think they will respect that. And they might say in that first session, before we come back next week, I think we're gonna find somebody else. Okay, that's fine with me, you know.
See, my wife would have been running. At that time, she's
Yeah.
a Christian now, but.
Well, those 2 guys didn't, and I led them both to Christ and baptized both of them. So and I've only had two weddings that I did that had someone who wasn't a Christian, and they both got saved. So, but notice I'm telling you, you have to make that decision for yourself, because the Bible does say that we shouldn't unequally yoke ourselves. But there's nowhere in the scriptures that point blank says you shouldn't do a wedding for 2 people who aren't saved, but it implies it. So that's all I'm gonna say,
I
yes.
have a question. So, like you were just telling us about the unequally yoked thing and that, you know, so your church does members only.
Mhm.
So even if only one of the members is getting married, do they both have to be members?
Mm-mm. Only one of them.
Okay, that's.
Yeah. Yeah, because not always are you gonna have, like the last wedding I did, they were both members of my church. And then the wedding I did before that, they were both members of my church. And so usually, if they're asking to get married, one of them is a member, so,
Okay.
yeah. And the reason for that is because if they're not a Christian, in our church, you have to go through a membership workshop, and in that workshop, I find out whether you're a Christian or not.
Right.
Because I don't want you to go through a membership class and then become a member of my church. You're a member of my church, but you're not a member of the kingdom of God. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So that's the other reason we have a membership class, so that I can find out where you are in your walk. Because there's a lot of people who are going to church every week that aren't saved.
Right.
You know, and some of them may think they are, some of them don't care. They just like feeling moral and being a good citizen, and they like potluck and this Sunday singing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, instructions for rehearsal, this is very important. The first wedding that I did, there was no rehearsal. The couple, both of them were, and this was before I had my own policy, this was before the church had its policy. This was my first wedding. And I had witnessed to a guy at the gas station, and I was over developing a relationship and witnessing to him. Well, I was witnessing to a young lady that was at the gas station too. She worked a different shift. So here I am witnessing to this young man and this young woman, and then as I'm talking to them, I find out that they are a couple. I didn't even know it. I'm witnessing to both of them. And so I think one of them said, "Hey, I think you've been talking to my boyfriend or my girlfriend." I don't remember. And I'm like, "Really?"
Wow.
Yeah, they work here too. Shelby was her name, and I don't remember his name right off. That was a long time ago. But anyway, I was witnessing to them, and they asked if I could do their wedding. So neither one of them were church members. So I said, "We need to do this right. So I want you to come forward and let the church know that you desire membership into the church, you want to be saved, and then we're going to do your wedding." So they came to church for about a month. They didn't want to walk the aisle. And then they finally came down the aisle. We baptized them into membership of the church, and then I let the church know they wanted to have their wedding. So no rehearsal. They said, "We've got people flying in. They're going to get here 30 minutes before the wedding. We can't have a rehearsal." And I was like, "Yeah, we really need a rehearsal." They did not want to do a rehearsal. So there's a couple of funny things, and then we'll move on. One of the things that happened was the place was packed, and they brought in the groomsmen and the bridesmaids, and they all went down, about 5 or 6 of them. And then, the little boy who has the rings, and the little girl who's the flower girl, she's in a pretty little dress. Well, they closed the door, and just before the bride came in, they opened the door, and the little girl was supposed to go down the aisle first, throwing the flowers. Well, when those doors opened, she stepped into there, and everybody in the aisle turned around with their phones like this, right? She just froze. She dropped that basket and started screaming and running. Grandpa got her and tried to bring her back in. She just screamed even louder. So he put her down, and she ran to somebody, got her, and she was screaming. Grandpa picked up the basket, and he looked around, and he just goes, and he's throwing stuff and going down the aisle. So that was one. And then the second one was they had a unity candle. And when we got to the part, I said, at this time in the service, as a symbol of their love for one another, they're going to light the unity candle. And if you don't know what that is, there's two lit candles, and they go down, and the bride and the groom take their candle, and they both light a larger candle, and then they blow the other candle out, symbolizing their single life is over, and now they're one flesh. So that's a unity candle. So they go down there and guess what? The candles aren't lit. The way you handle that usually is either one of the last bridesmaid or the groomsman or somebody who comes down walks by, and before they go up, they'll light the 2 candles, or you do it before the service.
Yeah.
It's better to do it later in it so they're not melting all over the place. So they're just looking at me and looking at each other and looking around.
Anybody
And I
have a light?
said, does anybody have a light? And all these Marlboro packs came out with lighters. So things will happen if you don't have a rehearsal, you know?
Even without rehearsal, things will happen.
Yeah.
We got married in May, and when we talked about rehearsal, even the whole setup, I was told, listen, maybe we can do this, and like, what do you mean we gotta do all this stuff? And I was like, yeah, this is part of getting married, you do these things. And he's like, I didn't even know that, you know, and then here comes rehearsal, half the people can show, half the other people can't show. So we had to show up twice,
Mhm.
so that everybody knew their spot. And even with rehearsal, there's always one thing you don't count on.
Oh, yeah.
And you were at our wedding,
Mhm.
I walked down the ramp, my second step, my shoe got stuck.
Mhm.
So either I stay there, try to pull my shoe out, or I keep walking. I kept walking, I just
Yeah.
took my shoes off. I was
Yeah.
like, well, I don't need shoes.
But there's another thing like,
It's like improvise while you're
I'm a
out.
stickler on things being aesthetic and being like say you've got 6 groomsmen and 6 bridesmaids or whatever. You got a matron of honor and a best man, and you got, you know. So what I will tell them is, I want y'all to come together, and then I want you to walk at a slow pace, and I tell the person behind them, when they get halfway down where that ribbon is, I want you to start. And that way each one, and so there's symmetry, and I know I'm, CDO, OCD in alphabetical order, right? So in rehearsal, those things are taken care of so that it looks real nice and that sort of thing. And then also, when they get up there, I will show them exactly where I want them to stand. Because if you've got 4 guys going down the steps on this side and 4 guys going down the steps, or girls going down the steps, I will take either those little garage sale stickers that are round, or a little piece of tape, and I put them where I want their right foot to stand. So that when they're up there and I have them facing the right direction, if that right foot is on there, they're gonna look nice and neat going down those stairs. You know, you'll have one here, and this guy's way over here. It's like, dude, get over it, you know? So simple things like that. And then when the bride gets up there, she's gonna turn and hand the flowers to the bridesmaid. If the bridesmaid's over there, you know, pay attention here. So anyway, that's just some funny stuff, but that's the reason you do a rehearsal, so that when and what I tell them is, we're gonna do this probably 3 times. Because I want it to start being like natural. Because on the wedding day, your mind's gonna be like, oh, what do I do? No, you've done it 3 or 4 times now, so you know it'll flow. Coordinator, this is very, very important. You need somebody who's in charge, and it's usually an aunt or a paid coordinator, but somebody needs to be, who's done it, who knows how this thing goes, so that when you look at them and say, you know, I need this for this, they know exactly what you're talking about. But somebody needs to be in charge. I was doing a wedding in Georgetown, outdoor wedding, and I had the stepmother and the real mother, and they were putting all their input in. And I could tell that Madison was a little agitated, and it's her wedding day. We're in the rehearsal part, you know. And so I said, hey, let's huddle up here, huddle up. You know, we're outside. I gathered everybody around, and I said, you know, Mom, you've had your day. And I looked at the stepmom, and I said, and I called her by name, and I said, you know, you've had your day. And if I need to know something, I'm going to ask Madison. If I want to know how something's going to go, it's going to be her way. This is her day, right? This is Madison's day. And I said, so if we're confused about how something's gonna go down, I'm gonna turn and say, Madison, what do you wanna do? And whatever she says is what we're gonna do. Cause it's Madison's day. Her stepdad come forward and he goes, that's what I'm talking about right there. That's what I'm talking about right there. He shook my hand. We were buddies after that. The stepdad was like, that's what I'm talking about right there. Cause he's between the ex-wife and the wife. He don't want to say nothing. So I just stepped up and said what needed to be said. Then he stepped up and said, what the preacher said, you know, so.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but if you've actually got a coordinator, that's good, because then you don't get these family things, you don't get a stepmom and a real mom or whatever. They can make it really rough. The other thing is, what will you wear? This is important. You want to know, do they expect you to be in a suit? Nowadays, that's not as common. Back in times past, well, of course the minister is going to be in a suit. But I have been at weddings where it was a Western style wedding and the pastor just had on jeans that were starched with the crease down the middle, a big buckle, and one of those bolo ties, and that was the preacher, right? I've been to some biker ones, yeah. So, what will you wear? And so, what I usually tell them is, I also want to know what color. If you're going to be in purple and red, I'm not going to show up in a green suit. That's just not going to look good in pictures. It's not going to, and that's important to the bride especially. So I had one who said, well, we're all going to be wearing the same tie. I'll bring yours. So I had this Celtic, it was his family, whatever you call that. Yeah. And it had his plaid, it was green and purple and red and plaid. So I had on my gray suit with a green and purple and red plaid, tie, but it matched all the other ones. So that's important. One time I had a black suit on with a purple tie. All the guys were wearing a purple tie. So, but ask that way. The one thing you don't want to do if you're actually performing the ceremony is for them to walk up and go, oh, you're really going to wear that tie? Just ask them first. Just ask them first.
Yeah, we went to a wedding where it was a black dress wedding. So the bride wanted everybody in black. The people who came, not the wedding party itself, but everyone who came. So it was I don't know if they call it black tie or everybody was supposed to be in black.
Right.
And one of her big rules was that no woman would wear a dress or a skirt that's any shorter than her knees. So if you're coming with an extra, make sure that her dress is no shorter than her knees. And I've never seen that either before. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I think that's really, I think that's good if you have a coordinator that, puts the word out, hey, look, these are the expectations, because like you said, it is the bride's day.
Yeah.
And the pictures that she wants to have, and she wants them a certain way, because she wants to be able to put them maybe on the biggest wall she has in her house, because she wants to, let the world, whoever comes to visit, hey, look at this is how our wedding was, and be proud of it, but also to show her children this,
Yeah, I've seen it where all the groomsmen matched each other. Now they were a little bit different than the groom was. The bride was in her dress, and then all the bridesmaids looked the same. And I mean, that's great, but also this is something else to consider, and this is not necessarily for ministers, but who's gonna pay for that? Are you gonna expect that bridesmaid to spend $100 on a dress, or are you gonna provide it? Anyway, some other things that are, whoa. This is my note here. Okay, before we go into funerals, some important things to remember. You are responsible for the marriage license. It's very important if you're the minister officiating yes.
What we wear, my cousin's wedding and one of my friends at work, I was in his wedding. The pastor, both of them wore robes, like a robe.
Yeah.
Like a black robe.
Yeah, that's especially in more liturgical churches. Our class last year, we had about 10 people from Bethel Independent Methodist Church, and I gave their pastor, I've known him for 20 years, I gave him a black and gold robe, because I don't wear it. It was given to me, and I knew it would fit him. and he was really happy about it. He says on special occasions, weddings, different things he wears. He doesn't wear one every Sunday, but a lot of their ministers wear robes. So
About the license, make sure that everybody signs it, 'cause I'll tell you a story about our wedding. Our groomsmen, not maid of honor, the guy, best man, thank you. Didn't, left before he signed our license. And we got married, it was my husband's best friend that married us. So the next day, we were all over at our house with all the family from out of town. My parents, his parents had just met each other, our grandmas were there. And the pastor comes busting through the door after church, waving the license saying, "You spent last night in sin, but you're married now."
Oh, wow.
So, make sure everybody signs it.
yeah, so this is important when you go to the secretary,
You go to the county clerk's office.
yeah, it's the clerk's office, but it's the secretary
Yeah,
that's on there.
and we only had to, I don't know if it's changed, but when we went, it was just us that had to sign it with no more witnesses. I know that back
Right.
in the day, you had to have like had to have 2 witnesses.
But once you give it to the pastor, it's his responsibility. He has to get it back to the county clerk. That's what, I said secretary, it's county
So they
clerk.
get it, you get it form it, they sign, and you take it back to the clerk's office.
No, they sign it, then I get it and fill the rest of it out.
Minister's job, and it tells you, if you read on that
Yeah,
license.
you gotta put
it
what
tells
county
you
it's in, what the
perform
date
that
was.
service.
Yeah.
You need to return that license, and like I said, these weddings, sometimes with funerals, have fun, that's all that's all. You gotta kinda go
Yeah.
with what the bride wants, and you can have all your policies that you want, like we got an AV policy, you know, if you wanna use, it is fine, but in our policy is, if you have music to play, we need, say your wedding Saturday, I want that music Thursday to make sure it plays, never fails, somebody brings something up there, weddings at 1, somebody brings something at 12:50 and goes, can you see if this plays? No, it don't play. Now your wedding's messed up. It's just like, it's just a lot of stuff, like, I've been like, my daughter wanted me to marry her, but she also wanted me to walk her down the aisle. So, Pastor Tolbert did the first part of the marriage, and when I got her to the front and gave her to her husband, then I switched with Pastor Tolbert. So there's all kinds of stuff that you can do.
I did all 3 of my daughters, the same
Yeah.
thing. The groom's, my son-in-law's pastor, he started off up
Right.
there. And then when I came up there and he said, "Who gives this woman away?" And I said, "Her mother and I." And he said, "Would y'all bow with me in prayer?" And when everybody bowed, I walked her up, he stepped aside, and when they raised their heads, I was standing with the 2 of them and he was off to the side. And then after just before they did the walkout and everything, I had him come back and say a prayer over them. So he participated in a couple of parts. The main thing about the license too is don't give it back to the couple. They are going on a honeymoon. There's no telling where that thing will end up. They'll forget. It's your responsibility. And then keep a record of weddings. I have got a file where I have all weddings, all funerals, all baptisms, all baby dedications, all of those things. I've got not only who it was, what the date was. If it was a funeral, I put the sermon passage that I preached. I put when the person passed and when I did the funeral, 2 separate dates. But I have on the computer a record of all of that. And weddings is another one. I'll put down the couple and the date that I did it. That way I can go back and look. I just keep it for my own personal. Over the years, I haven't done a lot of weddings, but I've done a lot of funerals. And if somebody comes and says, "Hey, did you do such and such funeral, 28 years ago?" I don't know. We've got a record, so it's important.
I have a question before we go
Okay.
to funerals. So, when you are the person that officiates people, be it baptism, weddings, funerals, all that stuff, we had that question, I think, come up before, but I think I wanna be really specific. If you don't feel that this is a good combination, I know you said when you gave your word, you're gonna follow through with your word, and I agree with that too, but when you feel that this is wrong, don't you have some type of responsibility when you put your name on something?
Yeah, I mean, if you felt that,
How I feel, like, how would I deal with something like that?
if you're feeling that much of a conviction and it's from the Holy Spirit, then, you know, you may need to sit down and talk with them. Being honest with you, most of the weddings that we do in the church, I mean, it's the last two I did, both couples were members of my church professing Christians. So we did go through the counseling anyway, just because I think there are some things that they don't think about. You know, I try to tell them, you know, marriage is a lifelong commitment. After the honeymoon's over, you gotta wake up and smell each other's bad breath. So you need to make sure that this is what you need to do, you know. It gets their attention, but it's serious, you know, and so, but yeah, if you felt that strongly, then I would definitely pull aside, say, hey, we may need to rethink this, or maybe somebody else is your guy or gal. Yes?
It makes me wonder, since you've done weddings, you say I've done that, many, have you ever had that situation where you weren't comfortable and you told a couple and they still wanted you to do their wedding? Because I'm under the impression that if you told them, it's almost gonna let you out of it. Because I'm
The only
assuming,
time,
but someone who's getting, a couple found out that the minister, the pastor didn't agree with their union, I think they're gonna find someone else.
Right.
So it almost
Right.
might be get out of the
this is,
situation.
but this
I'm
is
not
also,
using it that way.
this is also the reason if you have a policy and you make them read it and then they sign the policy. Remember I said your church should have a policy, but you as a minister needs to have a policy. And that, you know, your church may not say anything about marriage counseling, but if I'm gonna do the wedding, I expect 4 weeks from you, 4 weeks of marriage counseling.
Because you, like I said, you're putting your name on it.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like, to me, there's value to your name, you know, and when you put your name
Right.
on something.
Yeah, let me
it shouldn't be
clarify. I think I
like-
understand. I
it
think I
shouldn't be like
understand.
laissez-faire, you know, it shouldn't be like, oh, great, you guys wanna get married, yeah, sure, I'll
Right.
take it," you know what I mean? Like,
Right,
it-
so I think when Miss Evelyn had asked earlier, if the only issue is that they hadn't converted by the wedding day, I'd probably still do the wedding.
Right,
Because then at least they're right in the relationship.
right.
As far as they're married, they're no longer living together, cause that's usually the way that goes. The two couples that were in my church, I sat down with both of them and I said, your wedding is not till this date. That's a long time, cause nowadays they can be a year out. And I said, so what are you gonna do to ensure that you're right with God and each other in the time we're waiting on this marriage? And I just point blank asked. The couple I did a couple of years ago, they both lived in the same apartment complex. When he moved from Dallas to here and they got engaged, he moved in the same apartment complex at the other end of the building. And then trust me, the next day after they got married, I was over there with a truck and several guys from the church. We were moving her in, you know, but they stayed separate, you know, so. And then the last one I did, they lived in 2 separate houses while that time period.
I guess the reason I ask is because I've seen in the past people getting married and pastors just to please the church. You know, they're like, oh, you guys are together, we gotta marry you real quick, you know, and then their marriage is going through hell because they didn't use that counseling time.
Right.
They didn't use that.
That's why you need your own policy,
That's-
cause your church may not require one. D?
I was just wondering, and I'll just put it up, my wife and I were married by Denton County Justice of the Peace. Have you ever had a couple that just came to you and said, we wanna do premarital counseling, but we're just gonna go to the JP. We're just
I've
getting
never
married.
had someone
We're
do
just
that.
getting married at the courthouse to avoid all this, you know.
Yeah, I've never had anyone do that. My youngest daughter did not want a big wedding. She didn't want all the church people. She said, I don't know half of them. I don't want them all there. I just want a small wedding. And my wife, told me that she had contemplating just going to get married and coming back and telling us. And I'm glad she didn't, because my wife said, you're gonna hurt your dad's feelings. And it's because she saw her older sister feel obligated because her fiance's church all expected to be there, and our church, because she's the pastor's daughter, all expected to be there. And so a lot of her wedding went according to two churches and not her. But all she would have had to do was say, Dad, and I'd have taken care of it, you know. But she just kind of, well, she shared that with her sister, and our sister's like, yeah, that's not happening to me. I'm just gonna elope. So, you know, but yeah, so there, let me do kind of an umbrella thing here. If you're ever called to do a wedding or asked to do a wedding, and if at any point you feel the Holy Spirit leading you to not do it, I would not do it. Because they'll find somebody else. But I have not had any real negative experience. The only one that I had that I can honestly say was a little hard for me was I had a couple in the church. She was a member. He started coming to the church. He was a professing Christian, and they came to me and said, because of some legal issues and because we want to move in together, we want, after the service today, his mother's going to be present as a witness. We just want you to do a service for us right after the Sunday morning service. And I was like, are you kidding? And they're like, no, for real. We just want you to do a wedding right there, and we will have a formal ceremony later. But for legal purposes, we need a license right now, and also because we're gonna move in together. So I did not feel real comfortable with that, but I mean, they said we're fixing to move in together. And they were both professing Christians. She was a member of my church. After the service that day, it was a little boy, the grandmother, him, and her, and in about 3 minutes, they were married. Do you? Yes. Do you? Okay. Kiss the bride. It was that simple, you know. So, and they never did come back for the formal ceremony. So that, I never was real proud of that. So that was a rough one. Yeah, that was a rough one.
Just one quick thing about that, it's your responsibility, because that happened to my daughter. The pastor that married them never turned in the license signed.
Right.
And they found out down the road, there's a whole bunch of legal ramifications come with that. Because they really, until that gets turned in and filed, you're not really legally married. This was like about 15 years later they found this out.
I was invited to his grandfather, like, crazy. I said, when we're going. I will be up there with you.
Yeah.
I need the papers for the army. I was
Right.
like, we don't have time to decide to go next week or the week after.
Right.
I can take it, you can just give it to me, I'll take it.
I'll do it fast.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll make a copy of it where I signed it, and I'll put on it the date I turned in, just in case. And I've never seen it where they lose one, but no, I turned this in. I was
So,
looking with it.
So let's shift gears to funerals. We usually take a break about 7:30.
Let's take a break now.
Let's take a break now.
Yes,
and then
for
we'll
the
start.
funerals.
All right.